In 2010, Boolarong Press published Flying into the Mouth of Hell by Laurie Woods. Laurie flew as a member of the Australian Lancaster 460 Squadron immediately following the invasion of Europe by the Allied forces in World War II. In the first 3 months following D-Day, the aircrew casualties of Bomber Command exceeded those of the invading ground forces. Laurie Woods served in one of the most dangerous roles in World War II during one of the most dangerous periods and lived to tell the tale. Flying into the Mouth of Hell is his tribute to all the men and women he served with, from the ground crew to the air crew, who risked life and limb during storms, bombing raids, and enemy incursions to keep the Lancasters in the air. Laurie spoke with me about his time overseas serving in the war.
I considered at that time that I needed a little bit more education, and here was a chance of getting free education and, sort of an experience. Well, in the education standard had to be probably equivalent to about 2 degrees of course I was a navigator and bomb aimer and gunner, and that entailed a lot of study, 9 months of study, and I wanted to be a pilot.
Yep.
And I thought I was well fitted to be a pilot, but the Air Force looked at my final results, 83%, and they decided I would be much better as a navigator. I felt pretty good because if we failed, we had the option of either going out as a guard or going into the cookhouse, and I didn't want to be a cook. Well, it was one of those things. We arrived I was from Hobart, which is a pretty cold place, and we arrived at Summers, and it was in midwinter. And the first thing we had to do was draw some straw to fill in some, what they call palliasse, like a bag. And then they led us up the road to a whole line of tents. And so we had to sleep in tents. We had board floor, of course, but on these mattresses made of very thin straw, and it was bitterly cold. And then we were roused at I think about 5 o'clock in the morning. It was pitch dark, and we had all sorts of drill, rifle practice and all that sort of thing. And if you stepped out of line like I did one day, the fella next to me dropped his rifle, and I couldn't help but smile. And he was sent round the parade ground at the double, and because I smiled I had to follow him, and the fella next to me also smiled and he had to follow too. So to trot round the parade ground with full equipment and a rifle in the bitterly cold air was not over good. Well, it was harsh. It was probably equal to what the POWs suffered in their war camps. It's a different world today. Any inductees into any of the services wouldn't put up with that type of thing, but, well, we were tough. Oh yes, much. Often the fellow volunteers who are still living would say, I don't know what would happen if the same thing happened again.
Right.
The younger generation would not put up with it. Whether they could put up with it or not is another story, but they would not put up with it.
Yeah, right.
Well, that may have been the soldiers, but the